to talk at the public hearing? There's a sign up. Okay, just being official. Okay. No
Good
worries.
evening and welcome to the August 23rd meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. Tonight we're going to have a public hearing on the development and design standards for Central Issaquah. But before we get into that, I need a motion to approve the minutes for our last meeting of July the 12th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 12th.
Are there any corrections?
Shouldn't we second it?
I know.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. So with that, I'm going to open up discussion to Trish for what the city proposes for the permitted land uses.
Great. First of all, I have two really big announcements, really big. The first really big announcement, Emily has joined our small but mighty long-range planning division staff. She's been here a week. We are thrilled. If you have a moment at the end, introduce yourself, welcome her, and tell her we are so happy to have her here. It's just been a great week. I can't even begin to explain how happy Kristen and I are. That's number one. Number two, today, the 23rd, is the effective date of your district visions. Remember all that work? Today, they went into effect. They have not yet been loaded onto the website because we had some technical difficulties. However, tomorrow, bright and early, I'm going to post them if I can fix whatever's the matter. But I wanted you all to know, thank you again for the hours and hours and hours and hours you all spent making them so great. So thank you for that, and today is the big day. You may remember that the boundaries, we changed the effective date to change the boundaries because we're still working through the destination retail and the IC zoning piece of those properties. We're going to council in September to get more direction on that. So the boundaries aren't effective today, just the district visions. Okay? So those are the two announcements before we dive into yet another project. Okay? Any questions on those two things before we jump in? Okay. Tonight is Central Issaquah permitted use table. And you might wonder, don't remember this on our work plan. Why are we doing this? Well, when we looked at the storage units and the hotels, that perhaps limiting both of them, and when it got through council, they ended up only limiting the storage, self-storage units in Central. They asked the question, why are we only looking at hotels and self-storage units? Why don't we look at all of the permitted uses in Central Issaquah to see if they meet with what we believe the vision to be for Central Issaquah? And so we did a work session with them, and we kind of did a real basic, well, okay, let's pull these uses out. And they said, that looks like you should go ahead with that. So that's what we did. That's what's in your packet. And also in your packet is the letter that we sent to over 800 property owners in Central Issaquah to let them know that maybe the permitted land use table might change, that we're looking at it, and we want them to be involved and we want them to know about it, and to come and talk to you all at the public hearing. So the proposed changes, first off and foremost, and I'm probably going to say this 5 more times, no existing businesses are affected. If you're there now, you're there now, and we're so happy to have you there now, and there's nothing to change what you're doing now. You're okay. We're not making anybody go away. That is very important, okay? I'll probably say that again, though. We're trying to limit the uses that aren't the vibrant, pedestrian-oriented, service-oriented, that add to all that great urban part that you all put in the district visions. And I have some, on the top of the letter, we actually pulled out the verbatim criteria, if you will, that we used when we were limiting uses. We also clarified where, if the uses were limited in Central, where they are permitted in other parts of the city that aren't in Central and aren't in the urban villages. Just so a property owner, if they wanted to open another, whatever it is, that they had other choices. We also clarified some footnotes so that some of the uses that maybe didn't sound on the surface that they were real pedestrian, vibrant, like some of the manufacturing ones that actually kind of have that cool component, like a coffee roaster or a, clothing fabrication. We added a footnote that they have to have a retail component to kind of have that face on the street part of it that would make it kind of a cool urban use. And here's the summary table. There aren't many uses that we actually did pull for proposal. You got your jail, correction facility. You have your heliport, your helipad, and your helistop. You got your agricultural food processing, your building materials, storage and sales, your metal fabrication, hazardous waste storage. You're getting sort of a feel for these are, sort of loud, sort of maybe more impactful on a neighborhood. So this is the list. It's not a really long list for a permitted use table. The footnotes, I mentioned a couple of the footnotes. We clarified about vet clinics and with animals that they're only accessory and the storage, the boarding has to be indoors. This, I told you already about the light manufacturing, that they have to have a retail component to it. That's the actual language if you missed it in your packet. There's a new one that we added. We realized that because we took some of the intensive commercial land out of IC in Central, we didn't take it out of IC, we took some of the IC land out of Central, and the only pieces now that are in Central are right on the main road. Remember when we adjusted the boundary, so there's only like maybe 4? We thought that would seem a little odd to allow adult entertainment facilities in those 4 little parcels. So we're proposing to add that to the list of limitations. It can still go in all the other IC that are outside Central, but that was one we wanted to add for your consideration tonight. And I also found 2 errors in what you all received, and one was we had said, we added a footnote for plant nurseries that they could display their wares on a street, but then we said they weren't permitted anywhere. So that, of course, doesn't make sense. So plant nurseries are permitted in these zones that they were before, but the footnote that they can actually have a display, they can't have storage on the main road, but they can have really cool displays. So we wanted to make that clear for plant nurseries. And the other one error that I found was we had done this self-storage before the amendment for self-storage went through, so it still had the proposal and not the final version. So this is actually the final version of self-storage. Okay, so those are the errors that we corrected. Just in case you were curious, you might ask, Trish, how many acres are in those other zones where uses can go? Kristen did a really great table to show that, oddly enough, even though we have retail zoning and mixed-use residential zoning listed in our land use code outside Central, at this moment we have no land there. So that's a good trivia question if anyone should ask you. The other areas we do have land, and lots of land. Again, this doesn't take into effect that it's vacant or redevelopable or anything like that. It just is how many acres of land outside Central, but not in the Highlands or Talus, are in these zones that we refer to in the chart. Are there any questions on that? Okay. This is the zoning map. It's hard to see, but it's in your packet if you were curious, where is the mixed-use zone? And it's not up there. You're not going to find it up there. But where is the professional office zone that there's only a few acres left? And it's the very northernmost part of the map. Another good trivia question if you get asked. So after tonight, you're going to hear from the public. We got a few letters, I think, that I sent you before the last one from Lowe's, that they were worried about what if they wanted to expand, and it's okay for them to expand. There's criteria and a process in the central standards for expanding that doesn't call you a non-conforming or doesn't refer to anything like that about being a permitted use or not. And so I had sent you that one. If you're feeling comfortable tonight, you can make a recommendation to the council, And if that should happen, then we would go to Land and Shore on September 6th, and then hopefully have council action in October. Are there questions about any or all of this?
Okay, so are you,
I'm done.
no, don't go away.
No, I'm
That's-
close.
that's
I'm
telling
done.
you to go
This
away.
is the end.
So
This
what I'd
ends my
like to do is
presentation.
Open the public hearing, and then I know that there
Sure.
are a bunch of questions that you guys have. I saw a lot of red lines on your packet, so if that's okay with you guys?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to open the
Do
public
you want me
hearing.
up here, or do you want me over there?
Over here.
Okay.
Open up the public hearing at 6:43 and ask if there's anybody who would like to make a comment on the proposal for the central area development. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment?
I guess not.
I think you're supposed to say it 3 times. So seeing no one that is here to discuss or make any changes to the proposals that the city is presenting, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:44 and open it up to discussion for the commission. I know that there were some comments about going through each one and going through each group. So what is the consensus of the commission? Is it sufficient to go through each group to see if you have questions about the group?
I would start, Joan, by asking if, right now, for some reason, the agenda lists audience comments after our announcements, which are generally at the conclusion of the meeting. So in case someone from the public decides to pop in while we're still having a meeting, that we may open up the public comment later on, since right now on the agenda, it's listed at 8:45.
Right, and we were told that that the agenda has to have an audience comment section if you have a public hearing, so people that just show up and want to talk to you about important things, that they have a spot, even though it might not be what the topic of the public hearing is, and so that's why that's on there. I think
Isn't that usually put prior to our other business, though? No? Okay. I was just concerned about that it was marked so late that in case people were coming by. So on the off chance that someone comes
No,
by.
if somebody comes, I don't think we've ever limited people to make comments, but I did the public hearing first to make sure that if there was suggestions from the community that we wanted to be aware of before we started our discussion.
Yeah.
So since there are none, we're going to go into our discussion, and if anybody who is out there in the hinterland would like to come in and make any comments specifically about this, we certainly allow them to make a public comment. It won't be in the public hearing. Is that possible?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So in terms of like a public hearing, that would be on record, but public comments towards the end, that's not on record.
Public comments usually end up in the minutes anyway.
Okay.
So what is your suggestion? Do you want to go each line, or do you want to go in groups? You can still take out the lines in the group, so,
I'd say groups.
okay, groups. Starting at the beginning. Is there any changes, questions about agricultural resource? No? Going on to residential.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it's a good change to remove the mixed-use, single-family. I'm wondering if there are any concerns with still allowing duplexes or single-family 3 to 4 attached in the urban core and mixed use, considering our general goal is toward more density and mixed-use presence, which those types of uses would not allow for vertical mixed use. So I'm wondering whether anybody has any concerns on that arena. My concern is that some of the larger lots, such as the BMC, if that was to be taken out as duplex and put in as duplexes or things like that, well, that does build up residential. I'm not sure if it creates the density and walkability that we are looking for in this area. I
Is there a
don't know.
rumor BMC's moving or something?
No, it's just one of those lots that is larger
Large.
and could sell and become a large swath of housing that would kind of, if something like that happened, whether it's BMC or another lot, it would kind of dictate the feel of that area.
So explain to me exactly what your proposal is.
Well, my thought process and concern is that our whole goal in, well, not our whole goal, but one of the things we were concerned about in looking to change things about the urban core is to make sure that it is zoned and prepared for more dense uses. And so I'm concerned looking at urban core and mixed use as far as the zoning districts and still seeing that they allow things like duplexes, which I'm not sure if they meet that criteria.
I completely overlooked that, and I have to agree. I think that's, probably should limit it.
Because the reason I was looking at it is we eliminated single-family homes from mixed use, and they weren't allowed in
Right.
urban core. But I
Right.
wanted to go a little bit further and see if there was a thought process around still allowing duplexes.
Right, I think that's a really good point. We didn't, I think we were going all for the commercial kinds of uses, and we didn't pay that much attention to that, so that's a good catch, Lindsay.
Okay.
And would it just, are you thinking just in urban core, or urban core and mixed use, or?
I think urban core and mixed use, because when we had that conversation about kind of, should we consider that area of mixed use, which, what was that called, like East Lake, or what did we end up with the name on it? But basically, we said we don't want that to continue to be lower density necessarily than the urban core.
Okay.
So
And is
the
it-
only allowed use then would be in the dwellings multifamily 5 or more units? Is that what you believe? So we would take out both the other two?
I don't know exactly where my thoughts are there, other than I envision that area to be vertical mixed use or higher density, and so whether higher density would include 5 or more units. I mean, if they were vertical, that might make sense. If they were all horizontal, that seems to me very similar to a duplex.
Yeah, I agree, and in going with your train of thought, I think if we're going to take away the duplexes, then also taking away the single-family 3 to 4 attached doesn't fit within the scheme, thinking about back,
It's already eliminated.
not in urban core
The
and
one
mixed
below
use.
it, the line below it, Lindsay.
Well, I'm-
Is that the one you mean, Joy,
Yeah.
the one below?
Yeah, so that one's
So,
removed,
and
but
then, so then your argument you brought up was the duplexes, but then when we start going to single-family 3 to 4 attached,
yeah.
I think it extends to that as well then.
Yeah, and I would agree that I had all of them boxed. And I think they're probably still appropriate in village residential and mixed-use residential, considering what those are. But it's really the urban core and mixed-use zoning districts.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we're kind of all moving in that direction. Okay.
Does that align with, Trish, what you guys have been thinking?
That makes sense to me, now that you said it out loud. I just went right to the, we just went right to the commercial page. So,
Yep.
so good catch. Both of you, good catch. Are we on accessory unit uses now?
Nothing.
Any comments?
Nope.
Public, quasi-public.
I do have a question here. So I have an argument that involves intensive commercial, and this is actually spans quite a few of them. I won't get into those right now. I look at intensive commercial, and I worry that if we allow too much in intensive commercial, and we start building up in urban core and mixed use, a lot of these things that would potentially serve best in these urban core and mixed use areas may actually move over to intensive commercial because of lower rents. And by doing that, could actually push the services and offerings that we need in intensive commercial out because they would not be able to afford the rents. They'd be creating demand in an area that we really need to reserve for intensive commercial. So things like banquet hall, where there's a lot of a higher concentration of people maybe attending, might be best served in a hotel type environment or in the urban core where those people's services and so on could be met. And plus we're bringing traffic into the urban core and mixed use areas where there's retail services where there would not be in urban core or intensive commercial. So that's my argument for not having banquet, meeting, reception hall in intensive commercial because it's kind of out of place.
But you like all the other things?
And then looking here, the other thought was transit station. Probably should not be, when you look at light item 2, bus, taxi, van, transit station. Transit station probably should not be part of mixed-use residential or village residential and intensive commercial. That's too heavy, I think, for mixed-use residential and village residential, and it's too out of place for intensive commercial.
So on that idea, Trish, I know there's a separate one for park and ride. What then would be the difference between a park and ride and a transit station?
I always think of a transit station as being a little, sort of the little guy, like the mini me, that you would want them everywhere just to help out your mobility. But I don't
Like
know.
a bus
Yeah.
stop? Because I know we call the Issaquah Transit Center with the park and ride
Right,
that, but that's
Right,
more
but it's-
park and ride.
right, but I think of that as those, our two are big, even though one's a park and ride and one's a, but I would have to check the central standards to see if we actually have a definition of what it is and how big it is to make it.
I wouldn't want to eliminate bus stops in any of the areas.
Right, that's what I assumed when I was
Right.
reading it, was I was assuming like bench, a bus stop effectively as a transit station versus a transit center.
Right.
So I read it a little differently than Ron did, and so I was thinking that permitting use
Yeah.
everywhere was appropriate. So a definition on that transit station would be.
Right, and
Because if it
they're-
is the bigger, denser ones, I would tend to agree with Ron.
Right, and because they're public or quasi-public, I'm picturing that it's a metro, it's a sound transit, it's a something that
Oh, that's a good.
that you're able to, but I can check what the definition of, if there is a definition of transit station. And if it's only in a big way, I can cross that out, but you would want a bus taxi, or if I'm understanding you correctly, you would want a bus, taxi, and a van station could stay there? Okay.
Yes, yep. Yeah, I interpret transit station as like a large
Yeah.
Right,
enterprise.
because park and ride structure is separated out, so that's why I didn't link
Yeah.
them.
But it's a
Right.
good question,
Right, it
something that
is.
we should look into. Yep. And then as far as what Ron was saying otherwise as,
The banquet.
well, yeah, and just generally protecting intensive commercial, I think that is a good thought process and something that we would definitely want to protect. However, I think this is one of those areas that the market and the existing land uses would do in itself, just because somebody wouldn't necessarily choose to put their item there when they could put their banquet hall in an area that has more services around it. So I would be inclined to let the market decide that.
Okay.
I would also keep them permitted uses, only because I think of things like the church down the street that's also now an art center. I think of Pickering Barn. I think of, rather than necessarily an establishment coming in and dictating a banquet hall only situation and being able to garner a profit from strictly having that, I think of these multi-use spaces that can be used for that purpose as well, which I think actually does fit with our live-work situation. So I didn't have a problem with that for sure, per se.
So the idea is to live, work, and play. So you want transportation and you want facilities to keep the people there instead of in their cars and driving away. So you have to be really careful with eliminating a lot of this stuff.
Right, and it's good you guys are being so thoughtful about it. Was there a final determination about banquet halls?
I'm for keeping it permitted.
I think the consensus is keeping
Is
it.
keeping it? Okay.
I did find it odd that we were allowing the use for the funeral home mortuary in the urban core. That didn't seem to me to be quite in line, but again, if the administration felt that that's something that we need in a walkable way,
I guess it's probably there for convenience.
I mean,
I missed what he said, but does
Gallows
anyone
humor.
else feel that way, to remove it from the urban core?
Yeah, I can see why that would be one to potentially remove.
Okay.
So if you're going to do that, are you going to remove the memorial chapel?
I know.
They not go together?
It's a very good point.
Unless it's a virtual.
I don't think we regulate those.
Express memorial service.
Okay.
So strike out Memorial Chapel and,
Wait,
Well,
No, I don't want
what
to.
she was questioning our suggestion by pointing out another thing that is similar and should not be removed.
I see them as having different uses. So I saw them as being separate. One being more, a priori, the before, and maybe the
Focused.
memorial chapel's the
right.
after part.
Okay.
and then Park and Ride.
So hang on, though, before we leave, so we're keeping the
Yes.
memorial
Yeah.
chapel, but we're not keeping the funeral.
In the
Is that, am I
urban core.
understanding? Okay. Oh, or just in the urban core. Okay, that's what I have.
This is still part of that section.
Okay.
Park and Ride, lot or structure. I'm for removing those from mixed-use residential and village residential. Thoughts, feedback?
Mixed use.
I
That
kind of
sounds-
like the idea of having it in mixed use. That's pretty highly trafficked area, and
No, he said mixed-use residential and village residential.
oh, thank you.
I know, they're so similar. The only reason I would consider keeping it, as someone who grew up in the Bay Area, there are a lot of little lots
Yeah.
where you can kind of have a bunch of people park and then commute together. And so I don't know whether that is considered in that kind of park and ride parking lot idea, but I could see that being,
I just feel like we need more of it, and so the idea of restricting it seems odd to me, but I don't think that this necessarily is a guiding principle as to where they're going to plop down a giant, sound transit center. So to me, the more access we have and the more places for people to congregate and use mass transit, it's more of the feel of what we're going for, so.
I can see the idea that it doesn't really fit into either of those areas. I could be swayed either way on this, but I think generally transit is better.
How about asterisk it and say, like a small or medium, you limit it up to a
Certain square foot.
certain
Could we do
number
something like that?
number of spaces or something.
I would have no expertise at knowing what to,
Yeah,
What's the-
and that wouldn't even make a difference because it would be the concern of the vertical versus horizontal.
Are we looking at park and ride strictly as park and ride, or if you're putting it in mixed use, you need parking? So do you want to change, edit specific, I mean, I think we need parking. So I don't want to limit parking in either one of these areas.
Yeah.
I would leave it. I was happy with it being
I think we should leave
permitted and crossed.
Okay.
Okay.
Consensus? Leave it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Social services are fine. Go into essential public facilities. Anything that nothing pops up?
Well, I mean, in public outdoor recreation, do we really want variety of sports fields in the urban core?
Wait, where are you?
You're skipping ahead.
Not in the right.
We're still
Joy is
2
moving
sections
ahead.
earlier.
Sorry.
That's cool.
I breezed through schools. I was like, yeah,
yep.
schools everywhere.
Okay.
More school.
I like the unspecified essential public facilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a state term
Cover, yes.
Yep.
to cover all those things that we don't know about yet.
Do we want schools in the urban core and in mixed use? And so that's a
do.
kind of a safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you say schools, are we talking about large schools or small private schools, small charters? Does this include everything from Kim on? Learning centers?
It has schools, well, what does P3 say? What is the,
The learning
Footnotes.
centers would not be probably here.
No, they
Unless-
would be in the retail
Yeah,
services area.
Because this looks mostly like,
but it would include private.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, so these do include things such as a high school and things like that.
I don't know if they'd ever have enough land to go in there, but
Yeah,
if there's a
exactly.
possibility for us to get a school for our kids, then I think a neighborhood school is where it should be.
Yep.
Okay, so done with schools? Excellent. Utilities? Be pretty hard to limit utilities, just so you know. It's
They're going where they want.
sort of one of those city requirements, pesky
We
things.
need electric and
Yeah, sadly, that's part of our reason for being a city.
outdoor recreation.
So I'll raise again, specifically regarding fields, not to go forward to the picnic areas, but just a variety of sporting fields. That isn't really anything that we're wanting in urban core or mixed use, to be honest.
What if they're on
So-
top of a building?
Could be. I was
That's
thinking
why I say
about,
I'm not touching parks or picnic area, but specifically
like
sporting fields.
Tibbetts and the area just south of the Lake Sammamish State Park. There's several actual fields in those existing areas that I think work quite nicely and provide access to those types of things.
As they currently are.
Yes.
Can you imagine, like, BMC going away and turning into a variety of, soccer fields?
No.
50 acres in Redmond?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe keeping it in mixed-use residential and village residential is your argument of saying, putting the fields where the people are, but where we're trying to put our high-density.
Well, shouldn't the people in high-density situations have access to walkable environments, whether it be soccer fields or schools or parks?
I don't know that everything can be walkable when you live in a high-density.
True,
So
true.
But if the possibility exists, I think they should have the ability to have and use those types of facilities.
Well, they could certainly catch a bus and go up to the Highlands. I mean, it's not one's restricting their use of the fields. It's just saying, do they belong in the urban core?
I don't think they belong in the center of the urban core. I agree that idea
Maybe the
of,
urban core, but not the mixed use? I mean,
I don't know.
can you see that when we talked about when we were doing our tour of like the future of what is right now, Home Depot and Fred Meyer, and talking about what that is going to be in 20 years? I mean, can you see that having huge chunks of that now being sporting fields? So I mean,
And you know what, quite honestly, now that I think about it more, all of those types of sporting fields right where they exist right now are currently,
Outside.
they're in this area, but they're already zoned as community facilities recreation.
Yeah.
So like Tibbetts down there is already zoned for that. And so.
Again,
yeah,
I would
think
leave
you're
park and I would
probably
leave
fine.
like, neighborhood picnic area, still wanting to supplant some greenery into our high density. It's more just about the sporting fields. And if I'm the only one who feels that way, that's fine. If we want to put soccer fields everywhere. That's definitely the old school Issaquah way.
I don't think that says put soccer fields everywhere.
Well, right now it's permitted everywhere.
And you're looking at Fred Meyer, I don't think, it's not big enough, and some of the areas have little mounds on them, if you want to call it, so you're not going to have a soccer field that sort of goes up and down, so I think that
More of a frisbee golf thing. I hear what you're saying.
yeah, it's just,
Well, I think if you're a developer and you're going to be developing in the urban core or mixed use,
Valuable.
the land's too valuable for it to warrant a soccer field or a baseball field. But if the city says we need green space and community space, then they may want to create a zone that could have sports.
So how would it look if somebody was going to develop like an Atlas property that has green space in the middle or something like that, and they decided to make one of those into a soccer field? Would eliminating soccer fields as a zoning mean that they couldn't put that on their larger
Property.
residential property?
I would think we would have it be part of the project. So it would be just part of their, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Because the title is public and quasi-public, if Atlas let everybody be, if it's their own amenity or if it's open to the, but yeah, you're right, I don't think it's going to happen a lot, that you'd have enough room for a soccer, for a pitch unless it's on the top of your
Even in
roof.
those situations, it wouldn't be zoned as public. It would be part of their larger
Part of their site
property.
plan, right.
Much like you said with schools, they're going to have a field on it, but that's not
It's not a
considered an
standalone field,
outdoor
right.
recreation. It's considered a school.
It's part
I
of
don't think
something
they'll be
else, right?
built personally.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Too valuable. To Joey's point, I agree. On the other hand, I don't think that would ever happen because it's just too valuable land.
I don't want to limit things that, could be good, and fit into the area. I don't want to limit people's ideas. There might be a area that they want them.
Oh, we did that with storage, with hotels. I mean, we're strongly dictating how we want certain pockets of the city to look. If you see that as being an acceptable use to the urban core, that's totally fine. I just didn't.
What if we have a health,
So,
what if we have a health club decide that they're going to go into the urban
Exactly, that's
core?
a
and
really
they
good
want
point. I'm
a-
sure there's a ton of people who would pay a lot of money to be able to have access to that, and then,
And what if it was an indoor soccer field?
and I argue
This
that,
says
And
outdoor,
I
though.
bring that up because
yeah,
we have one.
We have that.
right.
they're actually real, so.
That's separate item. That's under recreation. There's
Right, but this is outdoor.
Yeah.
This line is outdoor recreation.
Oh,
Oh, there's a qualifier.
In or out?
I would make the argument for urban core and mixed use that it's out, but if I'm the sole person there, then that's okay.
that would be one I would probably want to talk to the Parks Department or look over the Parks plan to see if they have any thoughts about, I know they're looking to grab land as it becomes available to create their larger plan. I wonder whether limiting that would cause them any problems.
I wonder whether they would know. Check
I
back-
wonder
check back
if
with
we
them in a year,
should,
maybe.
yeah, bring it up.
I think, I'm of the opinion to just leave it as is.
Okay.
And I think it's a minor point.
I don't leave it as is.
Yeah.
My only question is if they're able to use it for private use and exclude the larger community from it. So they would be able to. So they'd be able to build their own private soccer field.
Well, if you're a landowner you should, within restrictions, you should be able to do with it what you want. I don't feel that the city has the right to completely negate everything that a homeowner or a landowner can do. I think there has to be some give and take, and good for the community, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't think they're
But
more
in
going to
this
be in there,
situation,
but
this is public,
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
quasi-public, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's got to have some
some public
piece of it,
access.
right. So am I hearing that we're leaving them in both places? Is that how it ended up? Okay.
how about a big baseball stadium?
Yeah.
We can field our own team as a competition for the Mariners and have the Issaquah something or other.
Cool, we could be the farm
How did
league.
that get in?
We can be the farm league.
We'll call them the
How did, which
Furs.
one get in?
Stadium, arena, and
Yeah, goodbye Gilman Village.
Yeah, yeah.
An amphitheater, if it's set up so that it's for music and stuff, I can understand that. I think that we wanted something like that in the state park. I can see
Right.
that.
Right.
Stadium?
I think we just wanted to be ready for things.
Any comments? Leave that in, out?
What is a tot lot?
It's like behind, it's got the little plastic slide and the little stuff
The
with
playground?
the chips and, yeah, the
Always
chips on the
You should know
ground.
that. You should know that.
Like, hello, Joy, haven't
So
you?
many things
Have
to
a
learn.
tot.
Oh, on the stadium, arena, and amphitheater, I think that would be another one where I would let the market decide.
Okay.
Yeah. That little around.
Recreation.
I'm looking here at amusement parlors, billiards, pool hall, miniature golf. I think we should strike it from village residential. And I think miniature golf should be striked across the board. Because it just doesn't bring enough revenue. I mean, miniature golf is,
Isn't
we're
that something
probably
you
not
let the
ever
market
going to get
decide?
one,
Why-
but
Where's your sense of fun, Ron?
golf,
You know what Ron's
not
next
miniature
birthday
golf.
party
This
should
is
be.
like putt-putt golf, windmills and puppy dogs. I'm
Yes,
shocked.
and funlands and merry-go-rounds.
I'm just shocked.
So that was my thought. I just,
Okay.
This is not to be
I'm teasing.
decided on what you particularly like. It's what you think is good.
Yeah, I think all that, I mean,
So I would keep bowling alley in urban core and mixed use.
I didn't touch bowling alley.
Oh,
People.
okay.
Bowling alley.
So I'm thinking like Bellevue Square Mall where they have the, what is the bowling alley place there?
Lucky Strike.
Lucky Strike.
Yeah, if that was like a miniature golf thing in there, that would be permitted because it's within a larger commercial tower and it's not the single use, right?
To have a miniature golf.
Really?
We saw the
Yeah.
bowling alley, too.
We had the bowling alley, but that you knew it was bowling alley, but where Gold's Gym is, that used to be, there used to be an indoor amusement type park, but it had miniature golf in it,
And the market decided.
which destroyed me.
Then Ron moved
Ron shut
here
it down.
and said, no more. I'm teasing. Of course I'm
It's
teasing.
only village residential, but I'm,
So Ron, you're saying eliminate village residential for amusement parlors, billiards, and miniature golf?
Yes.
Okay.
And then also eliminate miniature golf in the other two?
I mean, if we're leaving
something else?
amphitheater, I don't
Yes.
understand why
Yeah, I
we're
don't-
attacking like billiards.
Agreed.
Again, I would then defer back to let the market decide. I mean, if someone has, an extra large lot and they want to put up a little mini golf business, I,
do it.
yeah.
All right.
The liquor license, I think it sounds like a great idea.
Okay, let it
A little
go.
bit punchy tonight. Got it?
Anything else? We're going to leave the whole thing?
So we let that go?
Yep.
But that was fun, though. Okay.
And that includes the karate, the theater, and the,
Absolutely.
Oh, on the other page?
Recreation for all.
yes. Accessory and temporary.
Hang on a second, accessory and temporary, yes. On the last one, vending stand, non-accessory including espresso, food trucks, and general retail merchandise. Strike from village residential and mixed use. And my thought process for that was that do we really want food trucks in mixed-use high-rise area?
I do.
Yes, we do.
And then village residential is more really residential. And would that be an appropriate place for food trucks? That's my only argument.
It's one way to get services out there because they don't have,
Yeah.
it's sort of like a little mom and pop
These are temporary.
service.
They
And
drive in.
it's
and
accessory, it has to be connected to something else.
They drive in and nobody buys their product, they're not coming
drive away.
back. But if people want them, I don't see how you can restrict them.
It was just discussion starter.
Yeah.
Good.
Any other thoughts on that one? On Ron's idea? No, so we're leaving it? Oh, okay.
Trish, how does it work with the drive-through window, specifically with urban core? Remember when we did all that work on talking about like the newfangled walkable street that's currently like Mall Street, and there was this big thing about no drive-throughs allowed? How does that then work if drive-throughs are permitted in urban core?
And where, did you jump way
Under
over?
accessory and temporary, drive-through window or station. Right now it's permitted in the urban core, but I remember us having,
Oh, you're in the, okay.
Is that a design standard thing?
Yeah, I think it was.
Unless noted otherwise.
I mean, I don't have a problem, I'm not suggesting we remove it from the urban core, but I'm curious how that jives with what we've already done.
I would imagine that we're going to try to limit them as the time goes on, but because we're still transitioning, I don't know how you would actually do that in the, because again, this has to be accessory to something that's existing, like existing bank, existing fast food, whatever.
How can you take away a coffee stand?
Or
I
a
mean, we
Christmas
need
tree
coffee.
Yeah, we do.
Especially when you have kids in the car and you don't want to do the car seat thing. I know I would have missed a drive-through coffee back in the day. But
I would
that's a
look at
good
that
point as to
design
how.
standards in
Yeah,
particular
I'm
on
just,
that
I wouldn't,
area.
like I said, I wouldn't propose removing it. I'm just curious how that goes with what we've already done.
Right. Right, that's a good question on how do you try to limit them as we get more dense. But I'm not sure what the answer is, but I
Well, my
can,
next big question is, where is the Issaquah heliport?
we don't have one yet.
I talked to Bellevue
Swedish
about
probably
that,
has,
how controversial that was. We are not going there.
yeah, because I
You
remember
weren't here when we had
John
our
Jensen,
airport.
remember?
Yes.
Where was the bowling alley?
Bowling at, well,
Sam Kyle that was here. It was
Bowling slide.
it was in Destination Retail. Sam Kyle owned it, and now it's the office building.
yeah, it's my real estate office building.
Yeah.
Actually, does Swedish have a heliport?
I think they call it something else.
They have helicopter access.
I think they do for
They have
emergency
to,
kind of
as a
things.
hospital.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering.
Right.
Any glaring, okay. Moving right along.
Yeah, so we're on automotive now? Is that where we are?
Okay, so I wonder why we eliminated car wash from urban core. I understand eliminating the automotive and truck rental, but car wash, maybe as it relates to fuel station?
I think it didn't seem like it was that pedestrian-oriented, vibrant kind of a thing. It's sort of, speaking to what Joy was mentioning, trying to wean us off of having those kind of uses right in the middle of everything. But there was certainly some discussion about, even with the manufacturing kinds of things, that some of that is really neat if you can actually go in and buy it where it is right there and watch them while they're manufacturing. But to make sure that the retail component is part of the manufacturing.
Only in the urban core.
No, I think and now I'm jumping ahead, for the light manufacturing part, which is a couple pages
Later
ahead.
on, yeah. So with this area, looking at car wash, right now, the allowed zones outside of central Issaquah are R and IC. R is residential, right?
No, R is retail, and we don't have
Okay.
any acreage for that.
So that would be pretty limiting on a car wash. I would ask what the options are for a gas station that has a car wash attached to it.
Let's see if we can find gas station in the list. Is that,
I'm not sure I saw it, but I'm sure it's somewhere. Food and beverage.
it should be. But that would be under. If it's not under automotive, what else would it be?
Maybe it would,
You still have one in mixed use.
I know.
There's the Brown Bear Car Wash, and I think isn't there one planned right now for,
There was one on Gilman that they're doing cleanup activities. I don't see gas station.
and that would also be
I don't either.
Why
in,
don't I see
mixed
gas
use.
station? Maybe we were really trying to wean ourselves off of.
So if we could kind of ask that question.
Well, because there's the gas station too at the end of Gilman, isn't that, and that's still 4, right?
Service shops, towing.
Yeah, and that has
Gas, car wash.
car wash.
Yeah.
You said that gas station has a gas station.
Wow, automatic wrecking?
So yeah, two points here then. One, I don't see anything about gas or fuel stations.
No, and Susan found that it sends you to automotive services on the automotive, is that on the front page that you found it? I've lost where you found it. Under accessory and temporary, there's automotive service station. And it sends you to automotive, but, it's under.
It's the second
It's the second
one.
one, good. Thank you, audience. It's the second one under insurance service center.
Okay, so
Oh, we're
what we
good.
are saying with the car wash and automobile and truck rental line and removing it from urban core is merely that we wouldn't want a standalone car
Standalone.
wash or a standalone car or truck rental place.
Yeah, those would both be standalone, correct.
So car washes are still permitted if they're attached to an automobile service station.
You could probably make the case, are they under accessory? Then we would switch back to accessory to see if they can do it if they're connected to something else. Because would you want them if they're connected to something else?
Yes, well, because gas station.
Yeah. I think the car wash portion of a gas station can be fairly small.
I mean, you could make the argument that we're creating a monopoly. You have to own a gas station in Issaquah to be able to run a car wash within the urban core.
That's true.
So am I hearing you want it as an accessory use or you don't want it as an accessory use?
You're hearing we're having a discussion.
Yeah, this is what we want. This is what I want to know. Is I want to know if car wash means standalone or if
Yes.
it means any kind of car wash.
I would say because it's all by itself in the line, it's a standalone. Same with the rental. And it's not
So-
under accessory, it's under automotive as a standalone.
So then when you think about like automotive detailing with car washing, that exists right now.
Right, but you can't just go into a detail shop and say, I want a very nice wash. You know,
Oh,
you
no,
have
that-
to actually have
That's
the,
proprietary.
right, you have to have it, you know, they do it and they wash it when they're done, kind of thing. But you go in there to have the detailing done. But I'm picturing the car washes like, you know, the elephant one or the bear one or the, that it's a standalone all by itself. Car wash. But if you would want it to be in the accessory uses as it's allowed as part of a car wash, I'm sorry, it's allowed as part of a gas station, you could propose that.
Or as part of,
Or you can allow it
Auto
more, or
detailing
you can allow
services.
it more places, if you want. If you're feeling that we're neglecting a car wash, that we could put it in there, we could add it places.
Good question.
Trying to be
I don't even wash my
accommodating.
car. Maybe else wash my car.
I'm fine if car wash means standalone, strictly only a car wash, taking it out of the urban core.
It is. So you're agreeing with that? Okay.
Fine.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, I have another one. One sec.
In auto.
Yeah, I was looking at parking lot or garage. So parking lot or garage as commercial is talking about just a standalone, somebody trying to make money off of somebody parking.
Right.
All of that. Really don't want just a standalone parking lot in the urban core or mixed use.
Really? You might need them. Think about, I mean,
I would rather have them as garages than just standalone parking lots, but yeah, okay.
they gotta go somewhere.
Food and beverage.
Yep.
We've already talked about the banquet.
So for mixed use, bar or tavern with with or without live entertainment, for mixed use residential. And my question for that is, that's probably not the appropriate neighborhood to put a bar.
Or it could be the perfect place.
Well, it's, as of right now, it's almost all residential. And it's backs right up against a school, so you're putting a bar really close to a school. So I just think that it doesn't mesh with the neighborhood there. Today's neighborhood, what it looks like in 20 years from now or 30 years from now might be a different story, but I didn't think it would work there. I also didn't think that a liquor store should be in mixed use.
Hang on, one at a time.
All right.
Otherwise, I can't keep track of where you guys are going.
So feedback on bar or tavern in mixed use residential.
I'm fine to leave them everywhere.
Me too.
All right.
Tony and I are going to go to the putt-putt golf, too, after
Rub it in.
seeing the kindred
You got to bring
spirit
your
over there.
beer to the putt-putt golf
I will,
because you
of
play better
course.
golf. I play
Also
better
play
pool.
putt-putt.
And then, so liquor store, do we want to be able to say you can have a liquor store in mixed-use residential and village residential?
And I think, are those
I
still
didn't even, yeah, I
regulated by
didn't
the
even think those
state?
things were around anymore.
Are those still regulated by the state?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you can, okay.
Well,
And I think
Well, not
safe,
exclusively.
Really gonna be
no,
located.
they sold off all of those
Yeah.
stores to
Right,
individuals.
that's what I thought, okay.
So it would be commercial.
and that would be,
So you're thinking of pulling them out of mixed-use residential and village residential?
yeah.
Well, I mean, think about like where like the Bevmo is up in the Highlands, that's within, walking distance of homes. You think about like the backside of Gilman Village is that mixed-use residential. If you could see, well, we want to keep the integrity of the neighborhoods if there was a spillover into that area of a retail situation. I don't know that I would care if it was a liquor store.
No, I don't.
Okay.
So you've covered the next one with the drive-through and without, so there's something to argue about, right?
This next one for hotel lodging, Trish.
So a quick question, so we didn't make any changes on
Make
that
any
whole last
changes.
section, right? Okay, but we had a great discussion. Thank you. Okay, hotel lodging.
I was curious if you could remind my addled brain what we had decided on hotel when we were going through.
You guys were not in favor of limiting it, and that went to council, and council agreed with you that they were not in favor
Okay.
of limiting them.
Okay, it's good. So this is all in line with
What we
what
said.
we had already decided.
Right, they're all still there.
So are we on hotel and lodging now?
Yes.
Okay, so I had an interesting conversation with someone who actually runs an Airbnb, and their thought was if the urban core, when it gets built, they may want to purchase large volumes of units and turn them into Airbnbs for Costco.
Okay.
We want to allow something like that to happen. Basically, they're circumventing the hotel.
I think that could potentially be a larger conversation about Airbnb and temporary rental uses.
Took the
That
words right
wouldn't
out.
be part of zoning.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think about what Seattle's doing right now, trying to say that the owner needs to have some sort of stake in the residence. They need to, yeah, exactly. So, to me, that's kind of a separate thing than
Yeah,
permanent
it's not a
use- than
zoning
permanent
thing, but
uses.
it isn't a bad thing to
To have on the radar,
put on our radar at some point.
right.
Moving on.
Just for fun, Trish, do you want to detail what adult entertainment facilities are for us?
Do I want to? No.
Slides?
They are defined in the code, though.
And there's a lot of blank spaces there, so we're not going to see too many of them.
So actually, to that topic, do we even want to allow it in intensive commercial?
The state says we have to
Yeah.
allow them somewhere, and that is where we've chosen to allow them.
Okay, I can't disagree. If we have to, then that's where I put it too.
So I shouldn't make an argument that they belong in mixed-use residential? Is
You
that-
could make that with the putt-putt golf. You could put them all in one place.
Well, boy, this next section gets to the crux of two questions I have for you, Trish.
Okay, I'm ready.
When we got the Lowe's letter, I then went to the table, and I can't seem to find where we're limiting, like, home materials, the specific issues they brought up.
The building, the very bottom one on that page, building material storage and sales.
Building material, okay, so this is, I was surprised, because when we talk about live, work, play, I mean, everyone needs to repair their toilets, everybody needs to
Right.
build a flower box, you know, there's a variety of things that need to happen even when living in a small footprint home.
Right.
So taking that use out, I didn't quite
Because
understand.
I think we probably still have hardware store in here where you'd get those things that you mentioned, but this would actually be building materials like roof materials.
It's a
and-
BMC.
Right. And we're not saying they have to go away.
Obviously.
And they can expand even. There's a whole procedure in the central standards on how an existing use can expand. And we don't call them non-conforming anymore in central. And so,
What if we just left it? What if building materials?
well, I think the fear is that they need so much land that if BMC sold out to Issaquah Cedar, and not that we wouldn't love Issaquah Cedar to expand, but all of a sudden then you've got some land on a really big street that's again a real surface use of storage. That's not the vibrant place where people are walking and meeting and doing all those
Had
kinds
very
of things.
different experiences at Issaquah, Cedar, and Lumber.
Right. My husband would agree with you. His closest friends are at the building places. But I think we were just trying to think of land
Large
efficiency.
footprint is more
where
what
you're-
the issue is?
Where the vibrancy would be, and we have several of them in Central already, and we just figured, if one came in the next open spot, would we be like, wow, that's a really big piece of land with a big expansive use on it.
I just wonder if, thinking about these places disappearing for one reason or another, and right now, if we don't have a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a BMC, and then we've restricted them, anything coming in, that would feel odd if, you needed to go up to the Highlands, or, you know what I mean? If you actually didn't have building materials available to you in where most people are living.
So I think what Trish was saying earlier was a hardware store would be considered retail.
Yeah, and let's
Sure.
look to make sure that hardware
And so the
store-
difference to me between a hardware store that provides you the flower box and the replacement for your toilet handle and, all of that versus something that is building materials.
Well, it's the difference between building your own flower box versus buying a flower box.
But I still
home-
think
To
that,
buy a cedar.
so would Lowe's and
Let's see, hardware
Home
store.
Depot be considered retail? I would assume so.
I would say, because a lot of their stuff is indoors, and if it's
Yeah.
indoors, it can function just like a movie theater, because you don't really know what's going on in there. So I think the building material storage, with all the outside storage that takes up so much room, even though Home Depot takes up a lot of room, but it's inside, you're able to go vertically with it. And I suppose maybe if you were a building supply and you were inside and you could go vertical, you could still have the same kind of footprint feeling of it. And it would feel a lot different than going to BMC and not being able to walk all around it.
We're going to allow gardens, which I'm a proponent of having outdoor displays, having building materials, wood outside.
Right,
Is to me a similar function.
right.
I mean, I think maybe the argument would be one is more aesthetic versus another, but I mean, I like looking at the cedar and lumber yard. So
You and I are
I was surprised by that, and
Okay.
so and I had actually overlooked it until I saw the
Okay.
Lowe's letter, and so I just wanted to bring up to everybody if that was.
So for a follow-up, if you could pick zones to put them in, a new one, where would you pick?
I wouldn't mind them in mixed use.
Okay.
I agree with the urban core, taking it out. And then I'm surprised that it's out of intensive commercial, since that seems to be where we like to put things that take up a lot of space and are maybe less frequented from retail.
I want to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Lowe's, Home Depot, Issaquah Cedar and Lumber, and BMC. They sell a lot of the same things, but really not that different. BMC does take up a lot of empty space, but they really fall into the same industrial category. Some BMC caters more towards the contractor, but they sell lumber. Home Depot sells lumber, Lowe's sells lumber, Issaquah Cedar and Lumber sells lumber.
I would disagree, but that's because I've patronized the stores for different purposes, so
I don't see hardware store
mean-
on here anymore.
if you're looking to buy molding for your house, I wouldn't recommend going to a national retail chain. I would recommend going to the BMC. I recently were embarking on putting cedar siding on a shed, and I went to Issaquah Cedar and Lumber for that rather than a national chain. However, there's plenty of things that I get at.
Well, BMC used to sell kitchen cabinets, but let's say BMC's out and someone else moves in, and they sell kitchen cabinets as well as flooring and lumber, and that's now sitting in the BMC lot. And you have Issaquah Cedar and Lumber, who sells cedar and some flooring materials. And then you have Home Depot that sells flooring materials and kitchen cabinets, and you have Lowe's that sells flooring,
So what's
lumber,
the
and kitchen
bottom
cabinets.
line? Do you want it?
I think it should be left where let the market decide, because it really comes down to square footage. If
But the market
Lowe's,
decides, you're saying leave it.
I say leave it, and let the market decide on whether or not they can actually build a business model that's going to be profitable in that space.
So, Trish, I would leave it as well in mixed use and intensive commercial, but I would strike it
Get
from
rid of
urban
urban.
core.
That's where Lowe's is now.
Well, obviously, they're still allowed
Yeah.
and not unconforming.
So you would put it back in which one of the two?
Mixed use.
Mixed, okay,
The MU and then intensive commercial. Building materials.
okay. So
Storage and
mixed
sales.
use, intensive commercial, and urban core not?
I would strike it from urban core.
Okay,
That goes back
But
to
you-
my kind of, thinking about,
right, but you put it,
really hand-pecking urban core is what I tend to think.
but you'd put it back in mixed use and intensive commercial, is that
What does
the
everybody else think?
proposal?
I would, but what does everybody else think?
If we do that, then I would say the caveat is, if the urban core area changes and Lowe's still wants to put a building in the same location area, general area, then we should allow that to happen.
Well, Lowe's can expand if they want to. Is
Right,
that
but
you-
what I'm saying is, if the Pickering area gets redeveloped into the urban core, and Lowe's wants to move, say, where the PCC market might be now, we should
Okay.
allow them to be able to move within that area.
No, I can't do that.
So in other words, they reserve the right to be able to build within that area again.
Okay, that's not something we could,
And that, I say leave it.
So
that would
my
be-
concern with leaving it, whether or not that really fits Lowe's and Home Depot or just more of a building supply store is the idea of the urban core is walkability and vibrancy. And I don't think that a building supply store, a large-scale store like that, fits that criteria.
I agree.
I think what would probably help us is figuring out if something like a Lowe's and a Home Depot, where all of their stuff is internal, whether they would be retail.
Because I couldn't find hardware stores, so I think like an Ace Hardware would be just under general retail by the size. And those are, I just lost my place, but those are
Less than 125,000.
allowed most everywhere, up to 125 square feet. General retail service, those are everywhere.
Now, 125,000 square feet is a huge building,
Yeah, and that's everywhere.
which is,
And I would imagine that means
We're not
it's all
there yet.
enclosed.
about the size of Lowe's.
But that would be my hardware store, so I could still have my Ace in my urban core when I need a new light bulb.
And
Remember Lewis Hardware?
Yeah.
so this comes to the point, if we're going to allow retail 125,000 square feet and on an Ace, then we need to allow a Lowe's because they're really the same thing.
And what we're suggesting is that Lowe's and Home Depot fits into that retail category, not into the building supply category.
Okay.
The reason that Lowe's was concerned about the building materials is because a portion of their business right now is that external storage, and they don't want to lose that ability.
So the argument here, if I understand correctly, is to limit Issaquah Cedar and Lumber because they are a building materials only retailer, and BMC,
Not
which
them
is,
specifically, but
thank
a
you,
type
Joy.
of
Thank you.
business
Yeah.
that would do what they do.
okay, so BMC sells, they're a building materials company, but what if they sell kitchen cabinets? And they diversify their portfolio, so it's sort of like Lowe's.
It's the footprint of
Change
all the
their
outside
zoning.
storage.
It's not what they're selling. It's
What their zoning is.
It's how they're putting their items.
Right.
Yeah. So, for instance, right now, an intensive commercial is a fantastic plumbing supply shop. I mean, that's not.
All
that's-
inside, right?
That's considered retail.
Just retail,
Because
correct.
it's all inside, exactly.
Correct.
Shout out to the plumbing supply.
I'm thinking like lumber yards like in Aberdeen, but it's just strictly logging. They're only for specific people. The general public can't go into those logging yards.
Oh,
So that's kind of in my head what you guys are talking about. Not necessarily Issaquah Cedar and Lumber. I'm thinking more like Aberdeen.
right. And I'm
So-
thinking too, like you're saying, like BMC West, you can go into the inside and order your lumber, but you can't actually go into the stacks until you have the little piece of paper that you bought, whatever it is, and then you can go choose your 2x4s and 8x6s and all those things. But you can't actually just walk and visit like you can like at a Molbex, looking at plants and saying, oh, look at all this, let's have coffee and talk about azaleas. You really can't do that at BMC, but I'm with Joy, you should. You should be able to.
Come on,
They do
walk
it, they
around
do.
with popcorn.
And hot dog,
If
yeah.
BMC decides to change their business model to allow you to go pick your lumber, then it's becomes a Lowe's.
If they were to cover all that lumber
With a building.
and put doors on it,
Right?
So are we ending up in a place then, I'm
Having
asking,
another great
where
discussion.
all of where Lowe's and Home Depot and whatever, we have agreed that that's part of big retail and that's everywhere. And so are we back then to being okay with building material storage and sales going away? Is that,
And I missed how you ended it, that we're leaving them to not be allowed, or we're leaving
well,
them?
that's the question. That's why I'm understanding
Right.
where we ended up, that because Lowe's and Home Depot and places like that are considered large retail and they can be anywhere, that I'm hearing that we're okay with building materials storage and sales to go away as
Okay.
shown here. Is that? everyone-
I would be okay to have building materials stay in mixed use and intensive commercial.
Still there.
But if I'm the only one who feels that way, but especially like intensive commercial, I don't have a problem. If even further, if we want to say no mixed use, but yes to intensive commercial.
So Trish, question for you. With the intensive commercial, I know you said that in the central Issaquah area, it's only a few lots. And so
Right.
the idea was kind of be careful with what goes there because it's a very visible set of intensive commercial.
Right.
What happens if that central Issaquah intensive commercial expands to include other stuff?
Well, you all just took them all out.
Okay.
So that's a pretty recent action, but if it chose to, and the reason you left them in, the ones that are on the street frontage, is so that the more strict standards of Central would apply to those right
because
on
they're
the
very
street
visible.
corners versus
Yes.
the IMC. And so by allowing them building and storage on those few parcels, they would have the standards that Central would require. But if it's in the rest of IC, intensive commercial, then it would just follow Title 18 and not be as strict.
So, Joy, I think that given the visibility and the vibrancy that we're looking for all of these plots, including those few intensive commercial, I would be opposed to having a building materials shop there,
Okay.
and understanding that it would be okay in intensive commercial outside of central Issaquah.
Okay, so then it's
Be
being
my
stricken.
thought process.
I would agree.
So we're leaving them out, is that right? Okay.
Sounds like it.
But leaving them in intensive commercial.
Outside of central Issaquah,
Okay.
Yeah, in the last column.
yes.
All right.
So are we flipping the page?
We're flipping.
Flipping?
Okay. Light manufacturing, this is one of my personal favorites.
Me too. Why are we targeting the metal fabricators right now? I feel like we have an opportunity to actually have Issaquah be a hub for the arts, and I have a personal preference for industrial art, and I don't know why we would say that metal fabricators wouldn't be able to be allowed a use, and while obviously our current glass shop is not included since it's in Old Town, it's the exact same purpose. You have to have a glory hole, and I would actually say you create more of a chemical issue with glass than you even do with a metal fabricator.
Okay.
So I was curious
What was
why
the
that
thought
was.
process of eliminating those in specific?
I thought, is metal really loud, metal fabricators?
Yeah, once you close the garage door, you're not gonna, I mean, it's just bang, it's hammer sound, you
The
know?
hammers? Okay.
Hammer, metal. But, I mean, unless we're
I'm
talking about
totally
a different
open-
scale.
I'm totally open to, because that is the only one we took out of that long list. I'm just not that familiar with what metal fabricators do.
I don't know if you actually would consider art fabrication the same as doing major,
Most artists need to make a living by also like, making functional things like, gates, for instance, you could say is a more,
That's a good example. Gates versus like I-beams.
yeah.
So to Joy's point, because I actually agreed, I had a lot to say that you actually said exactly, so we're on the same board. It comes down to the arts, really. We want to protect our areas from heavy fabrication work, but light fabrication work, maybe gates, but mostly the arts, like if someone wants to do sculpture or something like that, we want to allow that
You can't really
to
dictate
happen.
what they're doing. They're gonna have a glory hole and then they're,
so in the arts plan,
Yeah?
does it cover any metal work?
You're asking me, Joan, about the arts plan?
wait, there's an art.
Well, I don't, to me,
I'm not sure.
that's art.
Right.
It's small scale or whatever. I look at this as major construction with machines going on all the time
Right.
and sparks and noise and stuff. So I just look at it differently. I don't know if I would even put it in the same
Right.
same place.
Right, and I'm not, when they mention gates, all of a sudden I have a whole different thought of what could happen in a metal fabrication.
It is defined as
place.
indoor and 30,000 square feet or less.
Right, so it has
That's a
to be
pretty
pretty
small metal
small.
shop.
Yeah.
But
That's not-
I
that's not
certainly have
building
never,
rebar,
that I
stuff
know
like
of,
that.
been near a metal fabricator to know what exactly goes on there, but.
I mean, but that's, could be railings, you know,
Right.
for a home.
It could be the
That's-
bridge over at Confluence Park could have been made by a metal fabricator. But,
So I think to me, the defining characteristics of what you were trying to allow are things like the coffee roaster or the brewer or something that would have a retail front area.
But if we go to that note, it says it's only if located in the urban core, there shall be a retail component.
Okay.
so it doesn't have to have a retail front?
If it's not in the urban core, it does not have to have a retail component, as I'm reading footnote 16.
16.
So maybe that footnote should actually be, in the chart rather than in the land use description.
Oh, I see, good, okay, I haven't read this
So
since.
that would be one thing, but then generally, I would say the idea of a coffee roaster or brewery or something like that that has a retail component is kind of one of those create something and sell it to the public, and I would include a metal fabricator and a glassworks shop.
If in the urban
As-
core. Because what I'm thinking is that, like, basically then what you're doing, let's say that you are a metal fabricator, okay? You do a variety of things at your shop. If you were required to have a retail component to it, which is fine, but you're hiring somebody to man the front effectively, you're probably also going to be spending more on putting like a fire appropriate glass so you have a viewing area into where you're working to have that kind of retail connection to how you're working. I mean, there's a different component of how you're building it. So I don't know that I would want to require that in mixed use, if we are going to allow metal fabricators, obviously. But I could see that being something that we would require in the urban core, because we're saying everybody, no matter what you're building, needs to have some sort of connection to the retail, but that's exclusively an urban core. So I would be for leaving metal fabricators since it's already on a smaller scale, but yet not requiring them to have a retail component if they're outside of the urban core. Because that's them hiring front staff to just have people doing foot traffic of, oh, look what you can do.
So do we want to clarify by maybe saying we want to restrict heavy industrial fabrication?
Well, it's already right now for less than 30,000 square feet.
And all indoors.
First word light.
And yeah,
So manufacturing general is 2 spots down, and that's not allowed anywhere except for intensive commercial.
Machine shop.
On the same note, I had also a concern about the coffee roaster. So there is a coffee roaster in South Seattle off of Highway 5, and when you drive by it, it has really super strong odors.
Smells
So-
wonderful.
Is it coffee odor?
Yes, unless you're living next to it, and after a while, you just don't want to smell coffee. So the thought is, do we want to restrict the odors?
Of coffee?
A commercial coffee roaster.
Doesn't it smell like coffee?
But a commercial
I mean, is your
coffee
concern that we're gonna
roaster-
have, we're gonna
What's a
become the
what?
roaster
Coffee
capital of the Northwest, and we're gonna have them everywhere, and it's just like,
No, all it takes is one coffee roaster. This is not a huge operation in this coffee roaster, but the smell is so overwhelming.
You got to understand that this is a tea drinker.
cinnamon tea has a lot of aroma to it, Ron.
All right,
I think
just
the
wanna be
intention is something like a Starbucks roaster store, or something like that, where they want to do on-site roasting in order to sell it. At less than 30,000 square feet, you're looking at pretty small. And I don't think it would
That's-
produce those.
it's still a pretty big facility, but yeah, okay.
And we could make,
beat.
we could.
Well, right now, it's not allowed with homes, so you wouldn't be living next door to it.
Unless you were living in an apartment in the urban
In
core.
the urban core. And am I, so just to see if I'm keeping up, we're
We haven't made a
still,
decision.
we're still allowing all of these that are listed in the urban core and mixed use and IC. However, are we sticking with the retail-only component only for the urban core?
As written?
Well,
Is that what I'm hearing? Or do you
Trish, did you
also
think it was
want to
something
do
different?
Or do you also, did I hear for a minute that we were also thinking of the retail component for the mixed use?
well, you
or
know
did I
what?
not-
I hadn't brought that up yet, but you are reading my mind there because that was my next
We're
step.
doing a lot of that today. All
Fantastic.
this,
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you just have light manufacturing and mixed use, period, without any.
My concern or my thought is we still want the mixed use area to be walkable, retail, things like that. So I could go either way on this, but I was going to bring it up and have a discussion on
Okay.
it.
Is anybody else could go that way for mixed use? To add the retail component requirement?
No?
I only see it in urban core.
Yeah.
The retail
I
part?
like the addition to it for urban core. I think it gives us a lot of fun possibilities. Again, but I see the urban core very differently than mixed use.
Okay, so with
Me-
mixed use, then it would only be light manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have the option. They could do something, but
Right, but we couldn't
So
make
do we
them.
feel
you couldn't make
like,
them, exactly.
do we feel like light manufacturing without a retail component would be a good fit in the mixed use area?
Yeah, couldn't you see a roaster moving in to like the Fred Meyer Plaza?
But you couldn't see it. When you said, can you see it? You wouldn't be able to see it. You just hear it and smell it.
That's how I feel about the Weldon Barber.
You're right. Well, my next question then, well, no, I can't go to the next question, then I'll be someone else. So that one died, we're not doing retail for mixed use. Is that what I heard?
I mean,
I would leave it as written, which is strictly for
Okay.
urban core.
And Troy,
But
you agree?
I agree.
Do
Jason agrees?
move
Okay.
the,
So then I'm on to the metal fabricator. Are we putting the metal fabricator and metal work our gate maker? Are we putting them back in the list?
I would.
Yeah.
I didn't see, I wasn't hearing a compelling reason from staff saying this is why we removed it.
Okay.
So,
Since
So
it's small.
I saw several nodding heads, so that yes to our metal
in. Yep.
person?
do
Okay,
we
so-
want to include glasswork?
That-
I
that
don't
was
know
my
how
next
far
one.
we need to go on that.
yeah, it's, to me, I would not start adding because I would just leave how it's been. If we haven't had an issue before, I don't know if we need to start dictating.
Okay. So we're
Unless,
keep-
Trish, you think like what would happen if someone wanted to open a glass shop in Issaquah and to the public, please, somebody open a glass shop.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we would call that because what would you imagine fire by?
Or by
I mean, they're
fire.
part
I think it was
retail,
like-
but they have a functioning glory hole, yeah.
Right.
So they do make stuff on site, so it's a combo. It kind of,
Okay.
it would be allowed in the core.
So I
Okay.
think we're getting hung up on all these different terms, the brewery, microbrewery, winery, clothing. What if we just axed all that and just said light manufacturing with the retail component?
No, because then you get a real wild thing come in and it's like, oops. So we start listing them because you don't want the oops to come in and be like, uh-oh.
Maybe we should add,
Well, that's why we listed them, because we wanted to be sure that we got to pick what could come in, and they didn't get to pick because they're light manufacturing. And it's like, oh, that's not what we meant. So we tried to like hand pick them
If there was an experience.
Okay.
because,
Okay, so we're leaving in metal.
oh, you just wanted to
Yep.
leave it.
We're leaving it in.
but no glass blowing, but no glass.
I would give it the addition if we don't think that there's somewhere else in the code. To me, it's,
Okay, is anybody else up for glass?
I'm fine
I
with
just
glass.
think it's part of art,
Yeah.
and it should be,
well, what about like a glass maker who makes like glass stairs?
theirs.
Oh, yeah, if you have the money, you can make like free floating, like solid block
yeah,
glass
those.
stairs. They're
Floating.
amazing, yeah.
And what
They
would,
float so that you have to,
like Harry Potter. And what would we call it if it was a glass fabricator?
Well, just like you say metal fabricator, you would say, yeah,
Am I a glass
Glasswork?
glass
fabricator?
manufacturer.
Glass?
metal/glass.
Yeah, right.
Glass/metal. Okay. Excellent.
So Trish, one last
Yes,
thing on
sir.
the same topic. Have you ever heard tap plastics?
I have not.
Okay, so tap plastics is kind of like what you're all referencing to, where they
They're out,
specialize in-
they're out on Apple High Point.
Yeah, so they have Lexan Plastic, ABS Plastic, and so on. So they could actually do some of the same thing because they're a retail manufacturer of plastic components.
Components like fun things?
Well,
Like-
if you are a...
Wire nuts.
If you're
Well, I can see the retail
depends.
component of
If you're a
that.
retailer, let's say you have a shop and you need some displays made, they will actually make plexiglass displays for your products.
And so as I'm walking down the street with my tea in my hand and I'm shopping and I see this retail component of,
At Plastics, it's
which
not-
I'm seeing what in the window that compels me that I want one of those. What is it?
There's not a lot.
Let me give you an example. My house has a ton of canned lighting, which I think is hideous. So I'm replacing all of it with vintage lighting from the turn of the century, which is quite a
Like
project.
this kind of thing.
So, yeah, so I'm taking out the incandescent
This
lights.
stuff, right.
Yeah. So I need a conversion. I have to convert all of that. So Tap Plastics is good for me to be able to, for electrical components, for me to be able to change out my existing lighting without needing to actually drill it out and then have to,
Okay,
drywall around it. There's different ways you
right.
can
No, I
change,
got you. I live with a
That's what I've
contractor,
used.
so
I've used Tap
I
Plastics.
get the whole
for it.
canned light thing.
Yeah.
But as I'm walking down our vivacious street and I see this light manufacturer and I see their retail window and I say, I
Oh,
want
they have that
Tap
size of
plastic
nut bolts.
thing.
I've been needing that. They don't supply them at the Home Depot because it's a specialty product.
Oh.
And I would have to get in my car and go all the way to
Okay.
Preston for it.
So it's totally an impulse buy that I need those wire nut plexiglass
gonna work.
things.
It's completely planned. You've been looking for it your whole life.
Okay.
No.
So I'm sensing not everyone is going with you
No,
on the
no.
tap
No,
plastic thing.
no.
Okay.
No.
It was a good discussion. I learned some more things. Any more on the list of light manufacturing? Okay. Anything else on that list? It looks like there's not a lot of changes on the rest of that page.
Can we move to medical?
Yes, we are going to medical. I like the second one crossed out.
It was already not allowed. anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Office professional, financial,
Okay. Okay. Retail?
telemachines,
I've got one here for retail.
Okay.
125,000 square feet is a huge building.
Yep.
Do we really want to put that big of a retail? And huge is, I don't know that Target is even 125,000 square feet in mixed use and village residential.
I mean, urban core.
You can't
Yeah, right now
go
they're
over.
not in either one of those.
You can't, you can only go up to.
Right, so do we want to limit it and say there's less than 6,000 and up to 6,000? Because if you put mixed-use residential, it could go out towards Gateway. So you could actually have a Target out towards Gateway. Or
There's
in,
no land left out by Gateway.
Village residential, which is mostly non-retail, it's all residential right now.
Right,
And we're
there's no
talking about-
land left, right.
That would be a very inappropriate place to put something like another Target.
So Trish, let me ask a larger question. Is there a standard size of 125 and more and 125 and less? Or would there be a reason why we couldn't look at that and kind of subdivide further and say, yeah, we're okay with, small retail stores in mixed-use residential and village residential and define what that is?
We could, those are sort of the breaking point of.
Are they the standards?
Right, by the time you build them and, because these can also be vertical. They don't have to be one story, 125,000. They can be stacked or however you want to do it.
I have to admit, I just trusted you, Trish. I can't even fathom what 125 versus 130 versus 100. I mean, I can't visualize it.
Right, and I should have brought my cheat sheet for how big.
125 is basically a front-facing, 416 feet long, 300 feet deep.
You obviously have.
Like a
map.
Costco,
Yes.
Sam's Club, like a big box chain.
Yes.
Right.
So not a target. A target would be under 125.
Right, and if you
Target's
took
under
it out of
125.
village residential, because there's no amount of land that big for village residential anymore, because that's all been spoken for. So I can see taking it out of that one. Mixed-use residential, I'm not as sure how much land is available there.
And that
But that's,
doesn't speak
remember,
to the
that's up to,
vibrancy.
so if it was 60, or if it was whatever, it's that whole category that you could do in those.
Yeah. Yeah, because here's the thing, I would be completely fine with a retail shop of 10 or 20 or maybe 50,000 square feet. You know, I don't know where that line goes, but not 100,000
Uh-huh.
feet.
Well, if you want to take a shot at it and say 80 or whatever it is,
I would
We
like to
could-
know if there are other standards that other cities might use or that the industry might use that would make sense there in limiting, because it feels like there should be a segment under, somewhere in the 0 to 125,000 square feet.
0 to 80.
Is that
Like
a,
that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Like,
but
what is 80? Like, how big is a supermarket
Yeah.
generally? Front Street is a small grocery, was
Right.
a small grocery
Right.
store.
If we,
What?
oh, we already have that,
So if you had.
2 pages earlier.
If you had a 400
Oh.
square foot
I thought we had something
building,
in there.
it would be
4,000 square feet,
200 feet deep.
45.
Okay, so wait on that for
you're
a second,
right.
because we're looking at the grocery stores. So 2 pages early,
Over 45,000 square feet.
yep, so they've got 3 different sizes. They've got large, small, and mid-scale. I
right?
would think we would want something like that on the retail side.
Add a mid-scale option.
So do you want to add 45 and less for
That
retail?
would be consistent.
Safeway, 45? I don't know.
To
I
just-
know, right?
To add the third category of 45?
I don't,
to 45?
I don't feel like I have enough information to define what that number is.
I think our question to you is, is that a common thing to do, is to break it down even
Yeah.
further?
Even
Or is
further?
it like this the standard thing, everyone just uses the 125 mark?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Because it
can-
feels like there should be something.
Another tier.
That defines a small and then a mid-tier and a large. And if you notice on the grocery and convenience store, the small is basically 0 to 4, whereas the mid is 4 to 45. So that's much larger. It's not just cutting it in half.
Right.
So by that same standard, I would be more likely to look at a small retail being under 12,000 square feet, and then the mid-size being 12 to 125, and then the large. Because that's that same 10% ratio. So what I would like to know is if there is a standard out there, and if we could use that, because I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the general idea is we're looking at mixed-use residential and village residential and saying that would be most appropriate for small, and then mid-size would be most appropriate for urban core and mixed use. And then my question would be, does large make sense in any of those? It does. I don't think a huge big box store presents an opportunity for walkability and vibrancy.
Other than, of course, the one we already know and love.
That is true. And
Right.
if there was a situation where it was multiple stories, you know, that might make me feel differently. So I'm
That is a really
Open
big
on
crate
that
and barrel
idea.
you're envisioning.
I have that vision.
Put it in the Highlands.
Right. Okay, well, I can go back. Is this something that I would need to, that you'd need to hold this, and I'd need to come back to you with that? Or is that something that I could,
Well, what if we created a category and we passed it along with this smaller sized category, whether it be Jason's suggestion of 80 or we use the 45 that was earlier in the document, and then if you do some research and you come back and you're like, this is silly, you guys are just making up stuff, then
I would never say that.
then
I
it
know
can
what
be
you mean,
stricken.
though,
It's
right.
almost like a caveat, like we see that there may be space for a more tiered system here,
Right.
but we're also like, wait, does it?
Right,
Yeah.
that would be the recommendation if you all would agree that it needs to have more definitions to it, and we trust whatever the research would be to move those
Yeah.
separations to the council that way? Okay.
And further, I would say, while I don't think it makes sense for a retail of 100,000 square feet to go into mixed-use residential or village residential, if that's the standard sizing that everybody's used to, I would also trust the market to make that decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if you're,
But that is a fair
Reese.
point. We could just strike it from urban core right now. I mean, we're saying even if the market supports it, there's no way that we want to have, equal to or greater than 125,000 square feet in the urban core.
What about mixed use?
What if it was, so you're saying no retail that big, what if it was like a flagship store of Crate and Barrel, REI, all of our favorites?
Right, then I think we were saying they would have to go into the Highlands, into mixed use, but not the core.
Okay.
I mean,
Actually, that brings up a good point. So let's say LL Bean decide they want to come to Issaquah.
Another good one.
They are?
No, I said another good.
another good one. A good
answer. No,
hypothetical.
I would
Yes.
love that.
You just manifested reality right there, Ron.
So if LL Bean decide they want to come to Issaquah.
Yeah, welcome.
Where would we put them?
Not the
LL
urban
Bean
core.
their stores are huge, or Cabela's.
Right.
These are huge magnet draws. I mean, Keith would go bonkers to get a Cabela's in here, because of the revenue. So
What
where
if they're
would we put
vertical?
them if we weren't to put them in the urban core or
mixed use.
mixed use? Highlands doesn't have the space to put it.
And what if it was vertical? What if it was a vertical
Yeah.
Cabela's?
Yeah, I
Well, I don't know that
still
we
see
should
it in urban
eliminate
core.
Yeah,
the 125,000. But I
From the
think we
core?
should-
All right.
From the urban core, but I don't think we should have anything like this in mixed use or village residential even as an option. I think it just should be
The large ones?
large.
yeah.
And that should probably be
And
cut off
I'm
at
getting a nod
12,000
on
or
that?
something like that.
So no 125 or more in mixed use?
No.
Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
No, yeah, Ron's saying leave it as written.
So the first line for greater than 125, we're saying keep it as written. The second line for under 125, we're saying we hope that it gets split into a medium and a small,
Okay.
and only small is permitted.
And just for the first two, though, mixed use and village residential? Or for the whole line? Okay, just for those first two?
Well, small would be okay in any of them, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so then how would that change? So if we're creating a smaller category, we're saying the smaller category is allowed across the board. What's then the proposal for right now?
The middle one then would be only urban core and mixed use, not mixed use residential or village residential.
So we only want small retailers in mixed use
In
and
mixed.
village residential.
So let me see if I got
Can't
this.
do that.
The small one,
What if it works?
It's not appropriate. It's not what we want for a vision, right?
What if it's a great facility with beautiful outside that offers things for the residents? I don't know what that would be, but what if it was a perfect thing for that area? I can't see 125,000 square feet, but I can see something smaller than that.
Well, that's why we're having a smaller
That's why-
designation.
Yeah.
Right.
But
45,000 square feet or
Or
whatever
80,
that-
we had had-
number-
I don't know what 45,000 square feet is. I don't know what kind of a company would need more or less than the 45. I can't vision it. And so for me to restrict it down to that is kind of hard unless I know something more than.
And that's why
looking
we're
at-
asking for the research.
Yeah.
Trish, you know everything. Remind me,
sadly.
Talus, that with that parcel that's on, on the left when you drive in, we had the whole discussion about
office?
previously. That was in the 125 range, wasn't that?
I think it was 150.
Yeah.
It was supposed to have a big office there someday, but we weren't successful because then the market fell.
Right, right.
But it was supposed to be a big
in
corporate
scale, that was
office, right.
around that size,
Right.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but it was intended for that, right.
So yeah, I would argue that that size space is not appropriate in the mixed-use residential or the village residential.
We agree on that.
Yes, but the way it's written here, we have an option.
In the up to
Greater than
125.
125,000 and up to 125,000. What we're saying is 125,000 is too much for mixed-use village residential.
Residential.
We want maybe half that.
Right, so we're
What's
saying,
that, what's that
so
magic
we would
number?
strike the up to 125 from the first two categories of MUR and the VR. However, our third category that we're creating of smaller is allowed across the board.
And that would be the small only, would be in the mixed use and
Would
village
be in
residential,
the
right?
two residential categories.
Okay.
Small would be across the
And to
board.
Joan's point, we could make that higher, even though we've used 45 earlier in the document. That doesn't, unless obviously Trish's research shows that there's a reason for these numbers. We could up that to 80, so that there's a difference between 80 and the 125 to allow
Still
for
could be
something that had some girth to be able to still succeed.
So let's figure out what that number is to protect
Does
the
that make sense, Trish?
residential areas.
We sound like
Yeah.
we're flexible on the smaller number.
Right, but you want a small, medium, and large, small only in mixed-use residential and village residential. Well, all of them can be small, but the only retail that can go in those two are the small. The medium is only urban core and mixed use and intensive
Industrial.
commercial. Is that right?
That's commercial,
Yep.
yeah.
And then the 125 or more is
Same thing.
where?
Yeah, it
It's
sounds like
medium or
Same
higher.
thing? Okay.
Same. It's the same.
Medium or
So that
higher.
goes away too.
So just
Okay.
make sure we're all on the same page.
It's right.
I have
Okay.
some hesitancy in putting a huge big box store, but I can see
I do.
where it would be good.
I don't see how that would be good in the urban core, but if you guys want to leave it that and let the market decide, that's fine.
There's multi-density. I mean, if it goes up 2 or 3 levels.
Yeah.
You could have an IKEA Express where they don't actually have a warehouse attached to it. In the urban core. Or
That just ruins the worst parts of the shopping experience. I've been stuck in the maze and then I don't even get my items. That sounds terrible.
Yes.
Try it on several levels. In Hong Kong, the IKEA is on several levels, and it's impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Impossible.
Stuck in there for days.
Yes.
I've only been to IKEA once. That's my
Something like the old cannery,
All right.
where it's an amazing shop. You can walk around and you can walk around for miles, and half of it's just warehouse, and the other half is retail.
Okay, so we're going to move on. So we have three.
We have three.
So we're on
Small,
retail
medium, large,
services?
that makes sense.
Is this the last page?
This is our last page.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what to
And
say.
I wanted to, I've got a real concern with dry cleaning.
Dry
For
cleaning.
mixed-use, village, urban core, with an exception of intensive commercial. But even I worry about intensive commercial for dry cleaning because the chemicals are so toxic.
Pretty
And
heavily
intensive-
regulated though, isn't it?
Yes, they are.
Yep.
Yeah, but intensive
Did you read the
commercial.
footnote? Because dry
Dorsey did.
cleaning using chlorinated solvents is prohibited in those things, whatever that means.
The CARA, which is the Critical Aquifer Recharge Area. Thank you, Lindsay, for
Fantastic.
reading the footnote.
Okay, well, in that case, I didn't see the 22, the footnote. I was looking over for the Ps and because he's got footnotes in both areas, so.
Yep.
Love the footnotes, love the footnotes.
You can have a store that just stores the clothes and gets it cleaned off-site and brings
So-
it back.
yes,
That's, I mean, that kind of a facility you need.
Yes.
Technically, yes, because a dry cleaning shop, if I'm not mistaken, is actually considered a hazardous industrial,
If it has the solvents there.
yeah.
So that's why we limit where they can be, because we have a critical aquifer recharge areas.
And can I just further ask where or what percentage of these areas is class 1, 2, and 3?
There's a map in the land use code on where the CARAs are, and I don't know those off the top of my
Are they
head.
very close to rivers, or
It's
is
near
it?
the creek and it's near the wells, our water wells. And so,
Covering a fair
You
portion
just
of
have,
that.
like, I know there's some in Old Town, there's some by the interchange where our water wells are. But yeah, we have them all mapped because we're so water conscious here.
Yep,
But I can send you those if anyone's interested in seeing where the cars are.
I think we should be fine. So does that deal with the concerns?
Removing feed store and agricultural supply, does that mean that it's not permitted anywhere?
This was one of the errors that I found. That's true what we were doing with the feed store, but actually the plant nursery would be, at least the proposal is that would be allowed, well, everywhere but destination retail because we're getting rid of that zone. But the plant nursery would be permitted, would go back in urban core mixed use and IC. That was an error in
But what about the feed store and ag supply?
that use would be removed
So there's not allowed anywhere in
in central.
central, other than where it already exists.
Correct. Questions or
does that
comments
mean
on
you-
that?
Yeah, I'm assuming you got feedback from our beloved feed store and agricultural supply.
Right, because remember, they're not in central anymore.
Right.
But no, I didn't hear
But
from
although
them.
we don't know where they are.
Right, we don't know. That's true. We don't. Well said.
Lost.
Okay, so we've gone through it and documented a few changes to it. And so before we, unless you have anything else to add, before we actually vote on it, we recommend that it goes. I do see somebody in the audience, and we did discuss having, if anybody came in late, that they would have the opportunity to make a comment. Do I see anybody who would like to make a comment?
Eve.
You don't have to.
We can't resist.
Got to do what I said I'd do.
Right. And that's admirable. That's
Yeah.
admirable.
And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Steve Pereira, Old Town, about 10 years now. I looked through all this material, and I am not versant enough in city code and zoning and all that to make anything articulate. I can't talk about pick a pieces, what should be here, what should we can't. It's just this idea of this vision or the scope or the sense of place that we seem to be losing in Issaquah that I can speak to a little bit when we talk about maybe not limiting big hotels to certain areas, when we talk about maybe not scoping new apartment complexes to places where they give the chance to build out a certain area of the city without impacting schools too much, where we crowd people into places where the streets aren't allowed and we're already griping about traffic and complaining. These are the things of the sense of place that we're losing, that unless we take the time to put some more restrictions based on zoning and code in place to further limit these things, to limit the heights and all of that goes with zoning that I don't think we have in place today, until not just me, but people like you that have a greater influence and scope and say that it's okay that we look at zoning and do these things and not just say the developers want these things. So if we don't allow the developers to have their say, they're going to leave, they're going to be upset. I don't know that I appreciate their input, but we have a chance to build the type of place that Issaquah we want it to be, and not have our perspective that we said we're not willing to limit their concerns or their rights or their input. That's the chance that this document is to say, to limit and scope those things, and I'm asking you to take those into consideration as you vote and deliberate. And in the meantime, I obviously need to do some more homework on things like zoning and all of that. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for serving.
Thanks, Steve. With that, do you want to make a motion to approve what we've just gone through and send it to Land and Shore based on?
We need to close out public.
Oh, I already closed
Yeah.
the public hearing.
Trish, do you feel like you have all of our random amendments?
I have all your very specific and well-thought-out changes, yes.
Well, I could
And if I don't
make
have
a
them, I think
motion.
Susan has them.
Make a
Right,
motion for as we've discussed in the ether without having to
right,
spell it
Mention
all
every
out.
single one of them?
right. And the
Yes.
small, medium, and large, we'll sort of phrase it that way, and then we'll do some research to see if we can buttonhole
What's
what
best to
those
do.
numbers would be.
I think
Okay.
that's
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the findings of fact as amended in this meeting this evening.
A second?
Any further discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes to
Well
forward it to
done.
Land and Shore.
Yes, oh, to the full council, well done.
Okay.
Next meeting, we're going to start, drum roll, the comprehensive plan amendments. Yay! And it's only September, right? We have tons of time to get through all the docket items, right? We may not be doing some this year because some of them, like the Shoreline Master Program isn't coming, we found out till next year, so that one gets postponed. There's several of them that our timing didn't line up with when the project is actually coming forward to us, which is good because there were a lot on the docket, as you guys probably remember. But we're hoping to bring the land use element, all the pieces of the land use element that are on the docket, we're trying to bring that September 13th. And since you just had 2 meetings off, we're figuring you're going to just be raring to go in September. Am I right?
You're right.
Excellent. Anything else? And make sure you're just super sweet to Emily, so she will stay another many weeks.
Emily, would you like to make a comment?
I always like this.
On the spot.
Yep. It would be nice to let the community know who you are and what you look like and how pleased you are that you're here.
Hello, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Emily Arteche. I'm a senior planner, your new senior planner, working in long range with Trish and Kristen. And I'm pleased to be here.
We're pleased to have you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for our new person?
You gonna
Mean
break
we
her
get
in
to
now or
grill
later?
her on
Did we do that on air? That might be more of an off.
Thank you very much. That'd be all.
We are very
That's
appreciative of all the planners because we know they do an awful lot of work. And so I think having you and having known you for a long time, I just want to welcome you and thank you for moving to our city. So, thank you.
Good deal.
Thank you, Chair.
Good deal.
So with that,
With that, I'm
I'm going
done.
to close the meeting at 8:29.
Nicely done. Nicely done, group. And thank you.